a question there in the chat about how we do this exciting live social broadcast to multiple channels. And I'm going to let you share that information with the students while I'm teaching the content strategy course. Now, content strategy at associations has taken a turn. And there was a traditional content model and there's a modern content model. We're going to talk first about the traditional content model. Traditionally, association content was very unique. It was created only within the confines of the association, and it was really specifically targeted or specialized in its nature for the members of that association. So if you are working in the Bricklayers Association, if you are working in the Nursing Association, if you are working in the Accounting Association, well, that content was going to be really specifically specialized. You guys know I'm not so good at pointing, specialized for bricklayers or nurses or accountants. So it was also, that content was carefully vetted. In the old model, in the traditional model, well, we were publishing primarily through journals and newsletters, and it would go through a carefully vetted editorial process. So it would be edited for topical relevancy, and then it would be reviewed for like literally grammatical and spelling and editorial standards and maybe style standards. And it would go through many rounds of review before it was ultimately published in your association journal or your association newsletter. Carefully, step by step, many eyes, right? It was exclusive. So 99.9% of the time under the traditional model, it was exclusively developed by your association and distributed by your association. So it was like within the confines, and finally it was thoughtful. So usually in the old model, we had very detailed and strategic content calendars. And so often tied to our monthly journal, magazine, or periodical, we would have an issue devoted to careers, and we would have an issue devoted to something related to the mission, an issue related to the annual conference, an issue related to education. And these were all topically plotted out across the year. Also, commonly, the calendar was the same from one year to the next, so that it was all planned well in advance with long lead times. And I sure do always envision the editor of the journal kind of sitting back with a cigar in his mouth, kind of a little smoking and a little bit of chomping at the cigar, just like Perry White in the Superman comics. That's the way that I envision the old traditional model. And so I'm kind of old enough that I was at the tail end of that model. I'm sure many of the students in the class here also remember that old model. But then something happened that turned our lives upside down. And the answer is not COVID. Yeah, Ida, you're right about that. What is the one thing that turned the traditional model upside down? Again, not COVID. There we go. And it starts with an I and it rhymes with internet. It's in fact internet. And then after that, we can talk about how the internet powered social media and really turbocharged and completely changed the way content works. So now we have modern needs, right? So what was really thoughtful and sometimes plotting in the past, plotting, P-L-O-D-D-I-N-G, now it's all about expedition. So how quickly can I get this content through the process and out, distributed out? It's voluminous. So it is not, in the traditional model, I watched a documentary once about how like CBS, ABC, and NBC created the nightly news. And it was all about getting the news ready for that 1 hour of programming at 5 p.m., 5 or 6 p.m. ET. Now it's about how can we get this out immediately? How can we keep the stories going? And this is where CNN came in. They really introduced higher volume and faster turnaround in their 24-hour news station. Also, back to association content, it's independent. So sometimes it was really within the association. In the past, it was within the walls of the association. Now, what I see associations doing is they develop some of their own content and then they partner with independent sources to round out that volume demand. It's still accessible, though it's probably not what you think. So in the old way, it used to be really only members because it was delivered literally in a magazine that only went out to members, or in a newsletter that was only delivered to members, or at a conference that was mostly for members. But today it's much more accessible. So we have new content strategies that have some content for members, but not everything. So we're going to talk about that later. And then finally, just as before, just as in the traditional model, we still try to keep it relevant. It's especially sometimes hyper relevant. So we do a lot of thinking about what our segments are, more so than we did in the past, and then tailoring down to the segment level. All right. Why do we care about content? So content satisfies a lot of needs at associations. The first need is, of course, membership, and my own background is in membership. So I was always worried about how our content helped encourage membership and supported the membership value proposition. And value propositions, literally the reason or the value that a member finds from being part of an organization. And a lot of thinking, I did a lot of thinking and a lot of arguing about what is gated content. We're going to talk about that in a moment. We also have mission content. So what's a big, actually, I'm going to back up. For members, I already gave you the answer. What's the big thing about member content? What's the defining characteristic? Tell me in the chat. Make sure you got that chat flipped to everyone and tell me in the chat. What makes something member content? Value, yes. Value, exclusivity, Tom, that's exactly what I was looking for. Gated, Kelly, yes. Login, those are all different. Firewall, those are all different ways of saying the same thing, which is this is content that is behind some kind of access point. So it's available to members. Now, you can see that I say the word versus here. I can't point today. You can see I say versus. It's membership versus mission. Now, why would I say versus mission? What's different about mission content? What's unique about that mission content? So many of us have a mission to, yes, I didn't even have to get through my sentence there. Elena came up with the answer. It's Shannon, you're right. So typically it's still industry related. So if I'm in the nursing association, my mission might be to increase the quality of care, right? And that content, though, I'm probably about quality of nursing care. I may not be putting that behind my membership gate. I may want that to be free and available to the entire public, just like Elena says. So this is definitely two competing objectives, right? And then I have this phrase here, non-dues. Some of you are going to know what non-dues means, but that is not something that if you are new to the association industry that you will know. What does non-dues mean? Tell me in the chat. What does non-dues mean? Yep, there we go. Yep, you guys got it. My good chatters. So this is revenue that does not come from member dues. So it might be that you sell an article or that you license your content. I came from an association in the legal industry, and we actually licensed a lot, not nearly all of our content, to LexisNexis. So we had it behind a gate online. We did have some mission, some freely available information, including statistical research that we do. And then finally, not so obvious though, but still an important competing consideration was the need to grow non-dues revenue. And so we had a deal with LexisNexis where they licensed all of our content for their giant online database. All right, so you can see that these are competing interests. And that kind of leads us to the state of content at associations today. Tell me, what is this a picture of? You guys know I do cartoons throughout this class. What is that a picture of? Tell me what it is first. It is, in fact, a train. It's a bullet train. You're right. I did not create that bullet train, but I did color it kind of purpley. And why do you think I am talking about the state of why do you think I have a picture of a bullet train when I want to talk about content at associations? I wish it does kind of look like the Disneyland monorail or Disney World monorail. Yep, fast changes. It is speed of delivery, and we can't turn it out fast enough. It's always moving and changing. And in fact, this is a very specific type of speeding train. It's a runaway train. So I feel that at most associations, I'm going out on a limb here, I'm going to say most, and certainly at most of my clients, when we talk about content, they are flying down a path that nobody knows what the plan is. So it cannot articulate the plan, cannot explain what's going on, cannot kind of articulate to me that member versus mission versus non-dues, competing interests and where they put their priorities. It's a runaway train. But today we are going to talk about content strategy and things that you can do to bring that train under control. We care about content strategy as marketers because we create interest, right? We're trying to create interest in our association or our products or our events. And so we need good quality content for that. We are often responsible for growing membership. So we need exclusive content, and we market events. So that means we need relevant content and not just, we've talked in the past that messaging and advertising in the digital world has really evolved. And it used to be at the dawn of the internet, we would just say, join now, join now, join now. Buy this, buy this, buy this. Go now, register, 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 register. Increasingly, we are offering up content and higher value resources in order to prove the worth. So for an event, we might offer up some content or video content from last year's conference, or we might put together kind of, I don't know, an infographic that talks about all the great resources that are available at the conference. We're not just saying register, register, register. We need content to do our marketing, our digital marketing first. Oh, and Amy says she's a little late to class. Don't worry about it, Amy. We will make sure that we take care of you on the back end. All right, so we got a lot of things to cover in content strategy. Content strategy is really amorphous and difficult to talk about. People don't always mean the same thing. There are at least 6 elements of content strategy, and this is the GDDMAA model, GDDMAA. So the thing is, I kind of made up this model to summarize all of that good thinking that's out there on the internet and by my fellow marketers and how they approach content strategy at associations. And I could not come up with a good acronym for GDD or a good mnemonic for GDDMAA. So if you can come up with a good phrase for GDDMAA, put it in the chat. I'll be sure to give you credit. So content strategy, you need to think about governance, development, distribution, monetization, access, and analytics. And we're going to go through these all one by one here in just a moment. So governance, it's kind of my favorite. This is if one of the challenges for associations is that content is not created in one department. For nearly all of us in the room here today, you are not the only person creating content. Maybe you don't even create content. One of the challenges is it's made in events and it's made in education, it's made in publications, maybe your membership group's making it, somebody in the advocacy office is doing something, communications is putting out press releases and more, all across the organization. So what we do is we put together a governance, usually like a task force or a council or associations. And while at the smaller level, you may not have much of a council, by the time you hit that mid-sized association level and up, you're pulling together cross-disciplinary councils to help govern content decisions, because there's usually not one owner across the organization. And that governance council is concerned with the quality of content across your organization. That runaway train has to have some rails. There has to be some standards. They want to build content development skills across the organization. There will be rules around that require compliance. So some things may require a legal review. You can't just have people cranking stuff out and publishing it on the web under your association name, especially if it's controversial, especially if it's incredibly thought-provoking without often a legal review or senior executive review. You want to have a council that's looking at performance. So everybody has a great idea for content, but they need to be looking at the analytics. And you probably want some standards around how you implement metadata for that content so that you can do the analytics. So you want to tag this. This isn't like hashtags that people see, but behind the scenes in your content management solution and elsewhere, you want to use some meta tagging. All right, that's the which one was that? That's the G. That's the GDDMAA model. So we just covered off G. Now, that first D is around development. So here, like I mentioned, this content is coming from everywhere across your organization. And here's some good examples from your continuing education department, from your news zone. Maybe that's your journal, maybe that's your periodicals group or publishing group. Research. I mentioned at the American Bar, actually, we did annual research about the state of the profession. That was highly valuable. That was something that only the American Bar Association could do. Advocacy. Maybe you have an office in DC that's doing advocacy efforts. Maybe you have an office in your state capital doing advocacy efforts. You have profession content. Look, I worked not too long ago with a plumbers union, plumbers association, and they had a lot of content around the profession, but it was about how to grow your business. That's something that they don't really teach you much in school or when you're doing your apprenticeship. How do you grow your business? How do you collect from a customer that is refusing to pay? When do you take them to court? This is profession content. And then finally, you have sponsor content. So you may have agreements and partnerships where your sponsors are contributing, and that is also an important source. GD, that's the GD. Here's another D, distribution. And this is all in your content strategy. We're going to talk a lot about distribution here. So increasingly in 2021 and almost 2022, we're doing webinars. You are on a webinar right now. So this is something that would not have happened 2 years ago, for sure. Webinar content is increasingly important, and it opens up all sorts of questions that need to be resolved by your content strategy, like who has access to the live webinar, who has access to the recorded or archived webinar, how quickly has that archived webinar then rolled out maybe to another set of people that could have access to it if it's dated, so maybe after 6 months, it becomes more widely available. These are questions that get resolved in your content strategy. And these are questions that a lot of associations, they have not really addressed. So we all went barreling through the pandemic, just trying to survive, treading water, just trying to keep our businesses afloat. And now we have a lot of pandemic content, and we're not really sure what to do with it. We're not sure what our rules are because we didn't have a clear strategy. You have newsletters that you are distributing content through, and events like your conferences, of course, your journals and periodicals. Here's a good one, communities. What do I mean about what are communities? I'm not talking about the social networks. That's next. What's an example of a community? There we go. So John was in it right off the bat. John's Kelly, thank you. So I'm not talking about LinkedIn groups, really. What I'm talking about are your association, maybe higher logic communities. So these are communities that you own, that you control. So I'm a frequent participant in the ASAE Collaborate community. And we heard from, Reggie Henry was a guest speaker in our first class. Reggie talked to us about how he often uses that community to distribute content for their organization, tell people about what things are happening. But then he also has an echo that comes back. So he sees what people are talking about, and then uses that to guide further content development. And of course, somebody mentioned this at the beginning of the class, social networks have changed the way that we distribute content. Often we are pushing out content, and that should be part of a smart strategy. So it might be that be sure you are not pushing out to social networks all the time, at least member-only content. That's just going to frustrate the non-members. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to take a detour here. We're going to keep talking about distribution. So things that really frustrate me and that I run into so often at my client associations are content leaks. So tell me, I'm actually going to tell you, a great example is we have a member-only webinar. And so we announce it to our members, and we put up a registration page, like an RSVP page, and tell people just sign up so that you can get the Zoom link. And then we don't check to make sure if they're members or not. And we're posting it publicly on Facebook and LinkedIn. And so everybody in the US is seeing this. All of our friends are seeing it. And this member-only content is suddenly available to the full public. People with the best intentions do not kind of follow the strategy and think through the repercussions. That's a leak. It's a big leak. And Tom, I see that you're doing a chat with, it looks like maybe Kevin. Just remember that you want to chat directly with Kevin on that so we don't distract everybody from my incredibly entertaining performance today. My favorite leak is podcasts. And I'm going to go to the mat on this one. I want you to argue with me in the LinkedIn group if you disagree, but I think every podcast is a leak. I think every single podcast is a leak. I think it is impossible to have a member benefit that is a podcast. And I actually had an argument with an executive director in a real estate association not too long ago because she has a podcast that she thinks is highly valuable. And I say, well, and it's driving membership. And I say, well, you think that it's a member benefit. It's not limited to members. You're not really, when we do the research on the benefits that are important to non-members and members, it's not in the top of that list. And you're not advertising it to anybody. So it's really not lead generation and it's not member value. I'm really sour on podcasts. I do not think that I think this is like number 998 on your list of 1,000 things to execute as a marketer. It's hard to find how these are driving anything more than general awareness, which is a very kind of loosey-goosey tofu top of funnel objective. Okay, recruiting tool. So Dan, take it to the LinkedIn group. Let's argue it out there. Nobody's convinced me that podcasts are a good idea and they take a dang long amount of time. All right, and then also if you're posting your content to YouTube or video or into LinkedIn groups or Facebook groups, you're probably not monetizing that. You're not making sure that that is member-only content. You are just kind of giving away your content free and clear. That might be fine if it's mission content, but if that's supposed to be non-dues content or member content, that's likely not the right strategy for you. All right. I'm also going to continue our detour here. We're going to talk a moment about federated search. So many of us have content spread out across our organization. It is on our website, of course. Maybe we have some content in YouTube. Maybe we have content for sure in our discussion forums or et cetera. And then we have a search on our website that doesn't connect any of it. So this is something that's kind of become more on my own radar in the last year. And this is something that I've talked about with Reggie Henry, the Chief Experience Officer and the CTO at ASAE. I know that he's putting a lot of time and effort into federated search also. So this is the application or the tool set that powers your website search and pulls all the content, indexes that content from across your organization so that your users can get access to it in one spot. So that if you go to a search page on an association website and you type something in, you're looking for, I don't know, you're looking for, let's use that old plumber example. You're looking for how to collect from a customer. Well, you'll get the web content and you'll get the content from a YouTube video that they posted, and you'll get discussion threads from that Higher Logic forum that they maintain. This is something that's become increasingly easier to execute. You do have to work on that tech stack. We talked about tech stacks in class 2. And one application, one provider that I see specializing in the association space, so they know how to integrate with AMS solutions and more, is FewSearch. So you can also check out FewSearch online. Those guys have been working with a couple of my clients. Tell them Chris sent you. All right. So GDD, now we're going to the MAA, right? We're halfway through your content strategy. Monetization. It's one of my favorite words. I love talking about monetization. I think it's like cool sounding. And we've talked about Ted Lasso on Apple TV, right? We talked about Ted and season 2. I don't know if we talked about the season 2 finale. My own disappointment. Many of my friends thought it was the best episode ever. Well, there's another Apple TV Plus show that I love, and that's called Mythic Quest. Does anybody watch Mythic Quest? Jonathan, nope, not me. All right, never heard of it. So if you have not heard of it, I think it's a good one to check out. So it's this video game company, right? Total drama, comedy and drama. It's a video game company. The game that they create is Mythic Quest. I actually don't know the name of the company, probably Mythic Quest also. And it's got this crazy CEO, and they're all trying to make this super cool game. And the villain in Mythic Quest is the man that is in charge of monetization. That's right. So he's the guy that says, no, you can't do that because it's not going to make us any money. You can't do that, or you need to change it and do it this way so that you can make us money. So monetization is the evil character at Mythic Quest. And in fact, it's maybe not evil, but it's equally important to associations. So as you're thinking about your content, your strategy, your content strategy needs to think about licensing opportunities, how you can generate advertising money off of your content, how you can sell pockets of your content, e-commerce. how it drives membership. I talk about membership over and over. That's my background. And then even subscriptions. All of these go into driving the M in your content strategy. All right, rounding it off with the A. Did anybody come up with a GDDMAA mnemonic, something that would make this memorable? Content access, there are really three types. Open, that's lots of what we have for mission content, open and available. Gate, this is the term that I use to refer to member-only content. It's member-gated. And then paywall is for non-dues. And there are different paywall models, and they are always evolving. And maybe some of your favorite newspaper websites are a way to track kind of the latest trends and how this is changing. But we have often metered, which is you only get a certain number of views in a period, like in a month, before it tells you can't see anymore unless you subscribe. Freemium, which is like you get to see some of it forever, but other stuff is member only. And I know there's like a good website that I see where I think it's CNBC, where they have content that is pro level. So that's freemium. Like a lot of CNBC is free, but then they have pro only, where they have their very best articles. And then donation, which is, okay, this is like kind of the Wikipedia model, where it's like, okay, it's free, everything's free, but if you could just give us 27 cents, then if everybody gave us 27 cents, we'd be rolling in the cash. We never have to ask for money again. So these are some different paywall models. Often this is what's driving your non-dues strategy. And our final A is around analytics. Everything we do, we are digital marketers. In 2022, everything we do is measured and tracked. Okay, measured and tracked. So you need to have the metrics in place that at least help you understand the basics. What are people demanding? What are they consuming? And what money is it making? And then remember, you might want to be doing that reporting or doing that data collection across siloed areas, like just the website. Look at your search function. So if you're working with FewSearch or Federated Search Company or anything else, they should have analytics. Analytics needs to be part of your conversation, especially when you're setting that up. And then you want integrated reporting. And so I tell you every week, I tell you about association analytics. That's a dashboard that pulls together data across everywhere in your organization. And that is often through integrated dashboard reporting. All right. And Jonathan came up finally with a really, this was a big challenge, right? With a mnemonic for GDD, MAA. Oh, I think, so this one's a little bit of a stretch. Gerard Depardieu milks aged aardvarks. But I think we're missing a D in there. So does that D count at the end of his name for the second or the first D? Also, I'm not sure in French, do you pronounce the D at the end? Is it Gerard or is it Gerard? But we're getting in the zone. Okay, guys, good job. I told you that content is barreling at 100 miles an hour in associations, and it's a speeding train. I think actually for most of my clients and for most of my interactions and what I've observed, that content's actually kind of a train wreck. But if you put together a content strategy following these GDD, MAA elements, those 6 slides that we just went through, you can take your association from the wreck that it might be today to something that is a well-oiled, smooth machine. Okay, that's it, GDD, MAA. All right, and that is also the end of our live broadcast. Remember, if you're interested in learning more about the Association Digital Marketing Certificate course, you can get yourself on the registration list and you can check out our website.